Hey everyone, it's Riley from Echidna Sewing, and today I'm going to show you how to make this Christmas bunting. Here's what you're going to need. You'll need 4 different fabrics, about ½ meter of each. You'll need pins and some clips. You'll need sewing scissors, a ruler, an iron and an ironing board. Our pattern, you can find this pattern on our website. And you'll need a sewing machine. I'm using the Brother NV50S today. You'll need some thread. I've got Resent thread in a grey colour and I'm using T&C's regular point needles. So let's get into it. Alright, so we need to cut 6 individual triangles from each fabric. I'm just going to double my fabric up here so I can cut 2 triangles out at a time. There's our first 6 triangles from our first fabric. Now let's do the rest. Alright, now I've cut out all of my triangles from my fabrics. I should have a total of 24 triangles. Now we can set those aside and we're going to work on our binding. For our binding, you'll need 3 strips that are 3 inches wide and the length of your fabric. So my fabric length here is a total of 45 inches. So I'm going to cut 3 3-inch strips all the way down. I'm just going to mark out the 3-inch point at the bottom, the middle, and the top of my fabric to help guide me. If you're not so confident with cutting straight lines, feel free to mark out the entire line before you cut it. Alright, that is 1 strip done. Now I'm going to cut 2 more of those. Alright, so now once we've cut out our 3 strips, we want to go ahead and connect these into 1 long strip. So take 2 to start with. At the ends, you're going to connect them on a right angle, like so. Pin those together. Grab your ruler, and we're going to mark a diagonal line from that point to that point. Just like so. Alright, now once we've pinned that first one, as we go on to pin the second one, we want to flip this piece upside down and pin your other piece on the underside. Great, now we can just sew a straight stitch along those 2 diagonal lines. Alright, now when we sew our binding strips together, you want to back tack at the start and at the ends, and make sure you follow the diagonal line as close as possible. Alright, and do the same for the other end. Alright, now let's trim this excess off. And don't forget to trim your excess threads as well. Alright, moving on to the next step of the binding, we're going to want to press these seams flat that we've just sewn. So just open them out, grab your iron, and just press those seams to one side. Just like that. Nice and flat. Do that on the other side, and it should look a little something like that. Alright, now our next step for our binding is to place it wrong side up. Start at one end and just fold it in half lengthways and iron that flat. Alright, and now continue doing that for the rest of your binding. Once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and open our binding back up and fold in each side to that middle line that we just ironed. Like so, and then press that again with your iron. It should look a little something like that, and now we're going to continue doing that for the rest of our binding. The final step for our binding is just to fold this straight back over like so and iron that flat. Okay, just like that, and now you can do that for the rest of your binding. Once you've done your binding, we can go ahead and start assembling our bunting triangle pieces. All you need to do for this, grab 2 of the same fabrics, place them right sides together, and clip along the sides to secure. You can also use pins if you want, but I'm using clips. Now we want to sew this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a straight stitch down the 2 diagonal sides, making sure we leave the top open. Don't forget to trim your excess threads. And now we can go ahead and trim down the excess fabric on either side. When we turn our triangles right side out, we want this point to be as nice and sharp as possible. So just snip straight across on the end. All that's going to do is reduce the bulk and give us a nice pointy tip. Right? Now you can do those for the rest of your triangles. After you've sewn all your triangles together, we can go ahead and turn them right side out and press them flat with your iron. You can always use the tip of your scissors to gently push out the tip. You can also do this with a pencil or a chopstick. Okay, your triangle should look a little bit like that. And then the last thing we're going to do is just snip off these little bits of the inside seam. Awesome, should look like that. And go ahead and do that for the rest of your triangles. The last step before we assemble our bunting is just to choose what order you'd like your triangles in. As you can see up the back here, I've got mine in a repeating pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose what order I'd like mine in. Once you've got your order, I would set out your triangles in that order so it makes it fairly easy for you to pick the next one up. As you can see, I've placed my triangles in my desired order. That way it makes it really easy for me to just pick the next one up and sew it directly on. All right, so grab your binding and we're going to sew for about 10 inches to create a little tail at the end, and you want to sew as close to the open edge as possible, just with a straight stitch. Alright, once I've got that tail, I'm going to go ahead and grab my first triangle, and it's going to go inside the 2 layers of our binding. So top edge, the raw edge, insert it into your binding, making sure it's nice and flat, like so, and just continue sewing your binding over the top. Once you've sewn that triangle on, you want to leave about a 1-inch gap between triangles. All right, then you can add in your next one. And continue sewing. Once you've sewn your last triangle in, you want to do the same as what you did at the beginning and sew about a 10-inch tail on the end. Right, and I'm just going to cut my excess, which is not much, off. There's your finished Christmas bunting. Don't forget to tag us on Instagram so we can see your creations too. Happy sewing, we'll see you next time.